So for those of you who may at times kind of interpret what I say in a negative way, my recommendation is raise your hand and just say what you said was inappropriate, or what you said is A or B or C or D, and we can have a nice conversation about it. It's really a waste of your time, a waste of my time, especially a waste of your time, to kind of walk away from the class feeling bad or feeling hurt or feeling offended. Keep in mind that you see me twice a week for an hour, altogether maybe 3 hours. If you can be offended by something that I have said, you have another 50, 60, 70, 80 years to go. The world will crush you. So my recommendation is, just in case, you have received through your ears something that you feel bad about, or you feel kind of negative about, raise your hand and just ask it. It's okay. We can have a conversation. I'm not going to be offended. So is that okay? Yeah. Okay, anyone else before we talk about agency? And I'm guessing by agency you mean free will, the ability to pick and choose and do as you please. Okay, anyone else? No one? Really? Okay.
Can we define free will?
I'm sorry?
Can we define free will?
Well, yeah, we'll talk about it. Hello, Noor. Isam, right? My daughter's middle name is Noor. Before we talk about free will, agency, and their definition, maybe I should tell you a little bit about how you can be ready for education. I'm not just talking about this class, just education, period. And by education, I mean just kind of being able to think well, to be able to process the emotions well, make sure that you have no viruses or glitches in your software, because if you do, then you get stuck all the time. If that's a little abstract, let me give it to you in this way. For those of you who've ever had a traumatic experience, whether you went out with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a companion at the age of 2, and you broke up at the age of 5, and it has left a deep mark and wound within you, then, and if you haven't been able to process that experience well, what most likely will happen for the remainder of your life, if you don't pay attention, is that one experience that you had some years ago has its roots and its branches all over your psyche, your interior. And every time you get into a relationship, it's not that you can't love, but your love comes with a good amount of mistrust and doubt and fear. And after a few weeks or years or months, you will do your best to sabotage the relationship. So that's a virus or a glitch in your software. And it doesn't matter who you go out with. So the only way that you could kind of become to some extent free of maybe viruses or glitches inside you is to, first of all, dig them up, look at them, let them make you feel whatever it is that they make you feel, and then find some tools. Maybe you can go to Home Depot, get some wrenches, and figure out what to do with all those emotions that are all of a sudden springing forward. And then if you can, find a way to detach yourself from those emotions, observe them, kind of like what you do in your classes, take notes, go home, study these notes, and then you'll have a quiz, no doubt. And the quiz is next time you're triggered. In other words, you go out to get yourself a cup of coffee, and you find someone attractive out there, and you want to step forward and say hello. That's your quiz. Are you actually going to go forward and say hello? Are you going to go backwards and run away? Are you going to say, hello, how are you? Let's have a cup of coffee. So the point I'm trying to make is none of us in this class are exempt from being tested or quizzed. Oftentimes, of course, we fail them. So for those of you in this class who do therapy or who go to therapy, for those of you in this class who to some extent are on medication, for those of you in this class who like to talk to your friends, your companions about some of the issues you may be dealing with, until those issues remain, the truth is you can't move forward. Evolution for you does not exist. So for this class to become relatively relevant for you, applicable for you, there are some glitches that we need to talk about, and hopefully we have 16 weeks, not to remove them, but at least to have them come forward so you can see them. Any questions or comments before we move forward? Anyone? You know, I'm an immigrant. When I go to the airport, my holes are checked. When I go to Roseville to visit my parents, it's about 90% Caucasians, white. So they look at me funny, especially when I grow out my beard. Immigrants have to deal with some real difficult and practical things of life, especially those of us who came here in the 1980s. We didn't have time to read books and live in the books or live in our heads. You had to do practical work. So for those of you who once in a while may wonder why my classes are the way they are and why my conversation is the way it is because, you know, when you live in life and you're touched by life, you become very real. And sometimes it's very difficult for the audience to kind of capture those things. So just in case, again, some of the things I say may touch you the wrong way, just raise your hand, ask a couple of questions. So you don't walk away from the class wounded. All right. There was an American psychologist some time ago, hello, who lived in New York. If I'm not mistaken, he was an only child. And it's tough being an only child. How many of you in this class are, oh my God. For those of you who are the only child and you have no siblings, in some ways it's really good because you have the 100% of your parents' attention. You also are burdened by your parents' dreams and hopes. They will want nothing but perfection from you. And as a newcomer into this planet, you have no choice but to disappoint them. And because you happen to be the only child, when you disappoint them, they are wounded. Their soul is wounded. They can no longer fly. And sometimes when they refuse to pick up your phone calls, look at you, talk to you, it's because you have deeply disappointed them. Also, it's not true all the time, but for the most part, if you happen to be the only child, you're also very entitled. You want people to listen to you all the time. You want your attention from other people. Your emotions matter. Your thoughts matter. And you scream and shout and yell because, well, there is no one to wrestle with except your parents. Abraham Maslow was, I think, again, if I'm not mistaken, was an only child. He was mostly depressed. He had no idea what to do with his depression except to do psychology. And that's one of the things you need to know about people who like to do psychology. They have a virus within them. If you happen to be an introvert, a feeler, it comes organically, naturally, that you have no idea what the hell is wrong with you. All you know is that you're fine from 10 to 11. All of a sudden, you walk out of the classroom and you feel sad and depressed and lonely and isolated. And you hate yourself, you hate the world, you hate life. Everything about existence is just negative and awful and dark. Introverts or feelers also happen to be profoundly intuitive and insightful. They do music, they do poetry. For those of you in this class who are familiar with the writings and poetry of Khalil Gibran, he's a Lebanese poet, lived in New York, wrote beautifully, sketched beautifully. He was also an alcoholic. He drank excessively. Introverts have a tendency of being like the sun. Everything revolves around them. When they go to a party, they crack a lot of jokes, and it's not because they're funny people. There was a Danish philosopher named Søren Kierkegaard who used to say that the most melancholic of all humans are the most funny. That it's a mask that they wear. They're not really funny. Deep down, they are sad and lonely and isolated. And they use humor to kind of wear this mask that everything about them is good. But the truth is, there is nothing about them that's good. And if they happen to be like Jesus Christ, who is an introvert, who goes into the desert, tries to figure out who he is, what he is, he becomes a very, very proficient introvert. He understands his feelings, he understands his purpose, and he has no shame to come out and say, you see me, you see the poet. You see me, you see God. You see me, you see a good politician. I am everything. I am the embodiment of perfection. So for those of you who at times enjoy walking towards psychology, it's either because you're an introvert or something happened to you when you were very young. Maybe your parents divorced, maybe you lost friends, maybe your kid brother died, whatever the case may be. You had a traumatic experience and that led you into psychology because you want to understand why you feel the way you do, why you think the way you do, how you should interact with other people, how you should get rid of the wounds and the hurt that live inside you. Maslow, like many of us, lived in books, lived in their heads. He had a stroke. And I don't know if any of you in this class have ever come close to death. When something very, very real and practical happened to you. You may know the Bible inside and out, but it doesn't really matter. Imagine for a moment that you go to the parking lot to get into your car to go home, and you see a couple of people breaking into your windows, trying to steal things. You may be a great Christian when things are comfortable, but all of a sudden, Abi, hello, how are you? But your sense of compassion, forgiveness, all those things will go away. All you want to do is just kick their ass. Okay? When Maslow had this stroke, he asked himself some very, very difficult questions. If life can be taken away from you at any time without any warning, how should one live one's life? What is the most important thing to pursue in life? And it's not a place that is welcomed by many of us because it's another one of those big quizzes that life gives you. And you realize that your score can't but be an F. So for those of you in this class who enjoy reading the biography of Malcolm X, who enjoy reading the story of Socrates, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, Moses, one of the things you need to appreciate about these people is they didn't mind dying. They didn't mind dying because they've already been tested by life. They've already been tested by death. And they said, okay, if I'm going to die, that's fine. I've lived a relatively fulfilled life. And they lived a happy life. Not happy in the sense of being around Beyonce or Snoop Dogg or Miley Cyrus, but that their life was meaningful. They fought for something. They lived for something. For those of you who've seen Rambo 3, I think, or 4, live for something or die for nothing. And they lived for something. It's like the 83-year-old woman. She woke up in the morning and she lived for something. I'm going to find a nice tattoo shop, get my old sari behind into the shop, have someone stretch out my wrinkly skin and do a tattoo on it. It's beautiful. Okay? So, Maslow was creative enough to create a diagram or a map or a chart of the sort of stages you need to go through in order to be able to learn anything that is worth learning. So let me share that with you. And you could kind of put that mapping in any branch in your life, any stage in your life. If, for example, you are lonely and you want to get into a relationship, ask yourself if you have kind of gone through the previous steps. If you want to learn about yourself called self-knowledge, ask yourself if you in fact have done the prerequisites. Okay? If your mom or your dad tell you something and you reject and you become upset, ask yourself if you can actually understand what they're saying by again going to the map given to us by Abraham Maslow. So, for those of you who are interested in getting to know where you are and what your capacities are and what you're ready for, pay attention. For those of you who are not ready to pay attention, whatever. Any questions or comments before we go on? There is a saying in one of the Gospels given to us by JC. And since we'll be using a lot of verses from the Gospels, my recommendation again would be that, and again, you don't have to be a Christian, you don't have to be religious. It's just good literature, good things to read. Read the 4 Gospels. So when I once in a while talk about some of the verses, you have some background information, it'll help you. That the human being does not live by bread alone. Hello, Phoebe. But the truth is, for those of you in this class who may walk on college or may walk around the lake once in a while, today or tomorrow or sometime in the near future, find a homeless human being who looks bad, smells bad, everything about this person is just awful. Hand them a Bible and tell him or her, human beings do not live by bread alone. And you couldn't have done anything more insulting, more offensive to this human being. For someone to live by other things than physical bread, their belly needs to be full. They need to be healthy. They need to have the basic needs. So, the first pillar of life, for those of you who want to get to anywhere in life, is food. That includes water. Okay? If you come to class and you haven't had food for a couple days, it would be ridiculous for me to demand your focus. It'd be ridiculous for me, in fact, offensive for me to demand your attention. If you work graveyard, and I used to work at Shell gas station at Del Paso Heights in Sacramento for a number of years, and your body will never get used to working in graveyard. It's just something that biologically goes against us. It was a home to a lot of drug dealers, a lot of prostitutes. But if you work graveyard, but you also worry about your future, and you've taken a few classes, let's say one of them happens to be this one, and you come to class late because you get off at 7 o'clock by the time you get to class through traffic, it's about 9, you sit back there, and you may, because you happen to imagine that you have agency, free will, you sit in the back, your notes are there, your pen is there, you want to take notes and pay attention, but biology kicks in. And without you wanting to fall asleep, you fall asleep. And of course, being the arrogant man that I am, I come over there. If this was India, with my ruler, I would smack you on the head. I say, get up. At least that's how it used to be in India. I'm not quite sure how it is now. We got a lot of reprimands or spanking when I was there in the 1970s. So for those of you in this class who don't have food, whose bellies are not nourished, do not expect too much from yourself. But even if you have food, you need to be healthy physically. You need to eat a piece of toast and have faith in your physical body that it will digest it. You will not be constipated. Because any glitches in your physical health will remove attention, focus from other areas of life. Okay? Number one is food. We're not talking about philosophy, whether it's good to eat meat or simply grass. The most important part of life initially is food. I come from a Muslim country, Iran, very much like Islam. A month out of the year, you fast. From the moment the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down, you don't eat, you don't drink anything. And God forbid if you live in the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia, sometimes the sun comes up at 3:30 in the morning and it doesn't set until 10:30 at night. Imagine if you haven't eaten for 15 hours. The only reason that you can walk, you can talk, you can imagine, you can have meaning, purpose, identity is because your belly is full. You have energy. If you have no food in your belly, you will do what most people who do fasting do. You sleep. Next time any of you in this class have a date, take your date to a coffee shop, but don't buy anything. No drinking, no food. And you will realize how difficult human interaction is without food. Okay? Should any of you come to my office saying, I really like your class and I want to pursue philosophy, the first thing I will ask is, do you have money? Because without money, you can't buy food. Because without money, your nourishment for your belly is not secure. If you want to do philosophy, I want your complete attention. I don't want you to be distracted by not having food, by not having money, by you being unhealthy. So for those of you in this class who are single and are looking to be in a relationship, ask good questions. Ask the other person, how's your mom? How's your dad? Did you go to school? Do you have money? Do you have a car? Are you addicted to anything? Because all these can eventually become a glitch in your relationship and it'll devastate your relationship. And when your relationship is devastated, your dreams and hopes are devastated. And one day you'll wake up and you'll be 90, single, lonely, depressed, and needing to go to Kaiser. But no one can drive you. Okay? So food. When the weather is too cold, your flesh will tell you, and it will create a good amount of discomfort. When the weather is too hot, your flesh will tell you. And it doesn't matter if your belly is full or not. And the only way you can protect your flesh from the discomforts of external life is what we call shelter. You need to have a roof over your head. And this shelter must have a fridge. And in the fridge must be food. And you must have a bed. And you must have money to pay rent. Remember, we are not yet at the level of self-knowledge. The only thing you need to be aware at this stage is give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. When in Rome, do as Romans do. You have a physical body. That's your Caesar. Give it food. Don't be one of those stupid hippies. Your body needs a shelter. Give it a roof. Make sure you have money for rent and make sure you have money for food. These are the basic securities. Remember, we are future-oriented animals. We're always planning for our future. Always. Do not listen to Sadhguru. Do not listen to Eckhart Tolle. Do not listen to any of the Buddhists you'll watch on YouTube. You and I do not live in the present moment. In fact, you shouldn't. Unless you're just very, very advanced as a human being. You are here because you want to graduate. You go out on a date because you want a long-term relationship. Or maybe you just want to overcome your loneliness. Everything we do to secure our future. Everything. But you use the moment, the present moment, to create that future. You exploit, abuse the present moment to get to your future. So for those of you in this class who like to read a lot of books, but you have no food in your belly, get a goddamn job, make money, save money, buy food, save food. Find yourself a place, a shelter. If you can, live alone. Don't have roommates. But if you can't afford it, have roommates. But make sure they don't harass you. That you have some commonalities. Maybe both of you read poetry, do music. Yeah?
Why do you think living alone is better?
We'll get to that in a minute. Now, it's not enough for you to have food, and it's not enough for you to have shelter. You need to be loved. Initially, you need parents. That when bad things happen to you from infancy onward, especially the first 10 years or so, you can run to them. They can hug you, kiss you, bathe you. Without you knowing, it'll teach you how to love, how to have faith, how to trust. And if your love, faith, and trust are broken at a very, very young age, you can have 25,000 roommates. Inwardly, you're always going to feel alone. James Baldwin has this wonderful saying that if you want to have a conversation, you're forced to reveal yourself. And if you're broken, whatever you reveal, it'll come back to haunt you. People just don't want to be around you. And if you are far too aware of what lives inside you, there's a good chance you will never reveal yourself. Your conversations will always be superficial, surface, and eventually people will just get bored. The nice thing about being in a shelter where other people live, whether it's roommates or parents, I'm sure that many of you in this class have heard that human beings are social animals. But let me give you a different definition of what it may mean to be a social animal. We are harassed on a daily basis. You don't want to come to school, but you signed up for a class because you've come to be aware that without education, perhaps, without graduating, without taking a few classes, your future will be in jeopardy. You drag yourself out of the bed, you take a shower, wear some clothes, and you come to this class. And you look at me and you want to throw up, but you have enough decency to pretend that you like me, that you're listening. You go to your job. Yes, initially the paycheck was fun. You hate your boss. You dislike the customers. Once in a while you wake up and you find your task to be completely meaningless. You walk around the lake and you see people who smell bad, who look bad. They don't need to talk to you. The very fact that your eyes see them, that's enough of a harassment. Where you say, can't politicians fix this? All that money that we spend, can we house the homeless? Can we feed the needy? Do we really need to fight to get health care? Isn't it simple that the moment you're born, someone should tell you will have health care for the remainder of your life? Must everything be such a fight?